one of my favorite things to do is just talk to people who are just getting started, in the career or just getting started at the company, and be able to understand where they are, where they want to go, what their workload looks like, and how you can find the right workload for them to help them get to that next level, which of course you've kind of got to try to operate at the next level before you get there, which of course is where imposter syndrome shows up.
Hi, welcome to the G Research Open Source Software Outreach Podcast, the Gross Out Podcast. We're here to tell you true stories about what it's like to work in the tech industry in an open source without leaving out the gross parts. And today, I've actually invited someone who was really a longtime coworker of mine, although we never really directly worked together. He was sort of the well-known guy. If you've ever worked at a place that had, a couple thousand employees, there's like the dozen names that everyone who works there knows. I think everyone who's ever worked at Rackspace knows Major Hayden, has met him, has had a conversation, and probably has a positive story to say about him. So I'm interested to chat with him and see what's going on. And so thanks for coming and joining us, Major. Do you want to maybe tell folks, a little bit about your history, maybe some open source places they might have seen you, as well as, if you've got any special handles or something that they might know you as in projects?
Yeah, well, thank you for the really nice introduction and for having me on here. I think even some of that was true, so that's good. But yeah, no, I think a lot of my open source start was just, I think like a lot of people, just messing around with Linux. Some of us remember back in the days we'd have to go get a CD from CompUSA or something. I'm really dating myself now. And I just loved it that everything was accessible. You could get it, and there was documentation about how to use it, and you could make your own mistakes and then clean up your own messes. A lot of areas where I got started was trying to figure out how to do my job better at Rackspace. And then even before that, I had a job where basically my job was to babysit a Red Hat 9 server, not Enterprise Linux 9, but like the old Red Hat 9. It was just like, this thing has to stay up and we don't know anything about it. Can you figure it out? And it was just running Apache, and that was it.
So what's the CD you got? Let's get the correct epoch. Like, was it like a Red Hat Linux, probably like a 6 or a 7, something in that ballpark?
It was, I can't remember which came first, whether it was Mandrake or Mandriva, but whatever the first one.
Oh yeah, Mandrake started it. Yeah.
It had RPMs, and there was like a cute penguin on the box. And yeah, after that, I was hooked and started messing around with, I don't know what desktop environment, maybe KDE back then. But yeah, it was just so much fun to be able to say, what, I can have all of this software, like everything that's on the disk, I can have it. And there's more online that I can go get. Like, it was just really exciting.
The moment for me that blew my mind was when I installed Red Hat Linux 7.3, and this was in a dorm at NC State for the 1 year I was there, right? Like, installed Red Hat Linux. Then I'm like, oh, I wonder, how do you get on the web with this thing? And it had Netscape Navigator. Like, it had name brand web browser installed on this. That means that this thing must be serious business. But like, I know that you're not just necessarily a consumer of this stuff. You've done quite a bit of stuff in the Fedora community, right?
Right. Yeah. And so I maintain quite a few packages there still, although I've passed as many off to other people that want to learn as I can. Just really focused on a lot of things that I use every day, or that are involved in my daily work. Some of that includes things around AWS or Azure, or I most recently been doing some things around some of the Go SDKs and things like that. So I've been maintaining those for a while. And I think where I first got excited about it was there was someone at Rackspace that was really talented that wrote a bash script that would analyze everything that your MySQL server did. And then I suddenly realized all my bash skills were not very good, but I was learning Perl. And so I was like, oh, let's write it in Perl. These regexes seem easier to do. And then I found myself with a script that was thousands of lines long, and I didn't know what I wrote. So my introduction to Perl was pretty challenging.
Yeah, I think my introduction to Perl was someone else's version of that script being handed to me for me. Not that specific MySQL script, but I think everyone who's done old school system administration level work has seen that 1,000-line Perl script that was delivered directly from hell. And that's not even saying it's a bad thing. That's just saying that the ticket in the backlog to adjust one minor thing in the script is the one that's dusty at the bottom because no one ever wanted it.
Yeah, you're one or two curly braces or semicolons away from breaking the whole thing and trying to figure out where you were. So
it's okay. Just remove the use strict. It'll be fine. So why Fedora in particular? Is it just familiarity? Like, is there something about Fedora or about Fedora's community that has, I mean, honestly, not even to get you started, but like, I mean, you've been doing that for like a decade plus, right? Like you had quite a bit of staying power over there.
Right. Yeah. For me, it all came down to RPMs. I got to start with like Mandrake back in the day. And then I made my way into Gen 2 because I wanted to optimize everything to the extent. And I remember warming up my apartment in San Antonio during the wintertime, compiling something, either the kernel or KDE or something like that. And then after that, went through Ubuntu, went through a couple other ones. And there was a while there where it was like maybe about 3 or 4 big ones. And then Fedora Core came around and I said, wow, this is kind of cool. It gets me back to the RPM thing. It's not terribly far away from Red Hat stuff, which is what I was doing on the servers. And so that's what got me really excited, because I was like, wow, I can write scripts, I can build packages in Fedora that then I can take over to RHEL. And it's not like learning a completely new stack. Everything is about the same. And the community has been fantastic. I've participated in, I think, I can't remember what it's called, like Fedora Council at one point. They've renamed and turned it into a couple other things. And it was just so much fun to see people that wanted to propose fun things to do in Fedora to help communities we didn't even know existed. And to be able to help out with that and guide them, in a good direction, that was really exciting.
Well, and honestly, like as someone who grew up in North Carolina, like, I saw the Centennial campus where that original Red Hat headquarters was before it existed, like when it was land, right? The thing that's interesting about that is like, you look at someone who like approaches Red Hat in 2026 versus like then in like the very, very early 2000s. It's like, for me, the idea of like Red Hat being a company and not the community, they were like basically the same thing, right? Like you go to NC State Lug Install Fest and there's Spot of Fedora fame just there helping everyone install stuff, including helping me figure out problems with mine. Like, and you see that and you hear the lore of people talking about, yeah, the guy with the red hat. Like, it's not just a company store there. It's almost like kind of baked a little bit into the engineering architecture there. But I mean, I also was there in 2002, so it was relatively fresh. I have no idea anything about colleges in 2026 at all, regardless where they're at. But one of the pieces of content that you've created that I've probably referenced more than a lot of other things out there is you gave a talk. I think it was at a FedoraCon of some sort. I don't even know. Probably not called FedoraCon. Probably has some cuter name than that. But you gave a talk on imposter syndrome. And that was really meaningful to me because, especially when you're self-taught, like coming up through, it's hard to gauge that. It's hard to understand. There are definitely some people who can make hard things look easy, and there are people who can make easy things look hard, and it's difficult to find your judgment. But you talked about like a loop in there about going through, and like, can you talk a little bit about that? I don't want to take all your thunder, but like, I feel like that's like a valuable nugget of information I want the folks listening to hear.
So that was Fedora Flock in Rochester, New York, and it was either 2012 or 2015. I can't remember.
It was 2012 because I looked it up.
2012. Okay.
And I had that moment of feeling very, very old when I thought about how long ago it must have been that we originally talked about this. But I mean, it's a testament to how good it is that, at least to me, I think it's still as relevant today as it was then.
Right. Yeah. And it kind of came to me when I realized imposter syndrome was a problem I had, but it was also a problem with people that I was mentoring. So as I got a little bit more senior and more experienced, one of my favorite things to do was just talk to people who are just getting started, in the career or just getting started at the company, and be able to understand where they are, where they want to go, what their workload looks like, and how you can find the right workload for them to help them get to that next level, which of course, you've kind of got to try to operate at the next level before you get there, which of course is where imposter syndrome shows up. One of the things about my career that got me excited about writing it was I never really asked for any of the jobs that I got. Usually it was something where a manager would say, hey, this is on fire, or hey, we're trying to build something and everyone has really good dev skills, but no one knows how to operationalize this thing and get it going. Can you come do it? And so my career involved going from team to team to team to try and solve problems. And so, of course, when you get to a team that's working and working well, they have a lot of tribal knowledge. They know where things are hidden. They know what works and what doesn't. And then every time you kind of have to go through that loop of like, geez, I feel like I know nothing. Everyone in this group is so smart and talented, and I'll never catch up. And so then when I did that, that was like, okay, that is the talk that I need to go and do. And so the loop that you're talking about was, I'm forgetting now who came up with the loop. It was a member of the military, but the name escapes me. But it was what fighter pilots use, and it's the OODA loop. So it's observe, orient, decide, and act. And so fighter pilots would go and take it into a situation where all of a sudden they turned around and there's an enemy plane right behind them. Okay, well, first thing you have to do is observe, which you just did. And then you orient yourself. You say, okay, what altitude am I at? Like, can I go lower? Can I go higher? Is there something on the left or right of me where I can't go? Where are my options? And then you make the decision. Am I going to drop down and go faster and hope that I can slip up behind him, or what is it going to be? And then you take the action on it. And the nice thing for pilots is they can work through this really quickly and work through it repeatedly, and it just becomes a second nature. And I think we as technical people trying to make things work, we have to get in a lot of these same situations where, you know, a server goes offline. Okay, I've observed it. What exactly went offline? Oh, it's completely unresponsive. Oh, well, okay. Now orient myself. What do I have? Can I call someone who could put hands on it? Do I know what it was doing right before it went offline? And then also, how important is the stuff that's on it? Okay. And then based on that, I could take a decision. Okay, I'm going to make a phone call, get somebody to put hands on it while I go and talk to somebody else and find out what may have been happening before. And then you take the action. And so I think you could do that within, you know, in the realm of imposter syndrome as well. You can observe the people around you and observe what they're doing and how they react to the things that you say. Orient yourself around their reactions and then make a decision on where you're going to go from there and take an action on it. So I think one of the things that I talked about during the talk was whenever you speak, look and see what other people are doing. Like, are they agreeing with you? Are they disagreeing with you? Are they uninterested? And that's a really good opportunity to catch up with them afterwards, especially if you have a mentor in the room, to be able to go to them and say, man, I feel like what I said landed completely flat. You know, was it the wrong audience? Was it the wrong topic? Or did I start it the wrong way? Or what is it? And you'll get a myriad of feedback. You'll get, hey, you delivered it perfectly. It was the wrong audience. Like, they totally agree with you, but there's nothing they could do about it. Or you might get something, hey, you didn't start it off with an emotional appeal. Like, they didn't feel connected to what you were talking about. They didn't understand the topic or how it affected them. Or it could be something where it's like, hey, no, you nailed it. It was the right topic, right audience, but for some reason it didn't resonate. And you and I need to go work together and find out how that happened. Like, you did a great job, but something didn't work. And so that's kind of how I got my start thinking about that and how I mentored people, you know, at Rackspace and then later Red Hat.
Some stuff that I've definitely like told people before, especially like there are a couple of folks on my team who've recently gotten core reviewer access on the project. And like I mentioned to them, like when they said, you know, hey, I'm a little bit nervous, I don't know if I'm ready for this. It's like, do you trust me? Do you trust the leadership of the project? Do you think that we know we're doing the right things? I don't always think I'm doing the right thing, but you know, in aggregate, I think we do all right. And so like you can take that in, and instead of necessarily fighting it, like try to take it in, try to process it. Like, people are not going to give you access. People are not going to put you in the position to even be in that meeting, making that appeal, if they don't think you're capable of it to some extent. And that is interesting. And I think with imposter syndrome, it has a very unique intersection with open source, in that I think it's incredibly difficult for folks who don't have confidence to engage in many open source projects. And I mean, it's simply a matter of the public and peer-reviewed nature of it, right? Like, if you do something wrong, you know, I've got security bugs that I wrote the original bug, I wrote the fix for the bug, and I wrote the advisory and managed the stuff. Like, you know, you sort of, you know that there's going to be mistakes made. So it's kind of difficult to orient yourself there and to kind of take a moment to accept the fact that everyone in the world is going to see you at your worst moment and at your best moment if you're working in that. So like, have you seen that impact open source communities? Have you, you know, like what's your kind of take on that?
Yeah. And I think this is a two-way street. So if you're the new person coming to a project, or maybe you found a bug or found an issue, which this happened to me last week. I had to go to a project that I never worked with before in a programming language that I have done almost nothing in. But I found an issue. And, with a little bit of AI tooling help, I was like, oh, wow, okay. Yeah, I don't know this language very well, but the pattern to me makes sense. So let's go ahead and do it. And then I go to the project and I'm like, oh, I've never been here before. And I don't know what their processes are. And so the first thing I started doing was just reading the contributing guidelines. And then when I put in the pull request, I made sure to mention, hey, this is my first pull request here. I follow the contributing guidelines to the best of my ability, but if I miss something, let me know and I'll come back and correct it. And so I think that's one half where you can admit that you are a beginner, but you tried to do all your best. And then on the flip side, I think for a reviewer, it's really important for them to come back and say, wow, okay, this is someone just getting started in this project. It may be an AI slop contribution, or it may be something they worked on all weekend long. I don't really know, but let's give them the benefit of the doubt and take it from there. And this is something that within open source communities, it's kind of nice to have a buddy sometimes. And I think if communities make it easier for you to find a buddy, in the day, it used to be like, go to the IRC channel and you'd be like, hey, I found this bug. Do you think I could fix it? Someone's like, yeah, you should fix it, and make a pull request and just ping me when it's ready. IRC might not be the thing these days, but it's a great opportunity to open issue, see if they have a Discord, maybe they've got a Slack or whatever the hot thing is right now.
IRC definitely still hot in 2026.
Or Matrix
no
too.
question about it.
Matrix.
Nobody shut down your Chan serve yet.
Right. And it's something also too, like if you work in an office or you work remotely, grab somebody and say, hey, I want to make a contribution to this project, but I also don't want to look like an idiot. Can you put a second pair of eyes on this before I submit it? And it's a really awesome opportunity for senior people to look at something that could be fixed and say, I know exactly who needs to learn this process or whatever, and go to them and say, hey, I want you to take this ticket. I want you to solve this problem, but I'm not going to send you off by yourself. As soon as you got something where you think you've got it fixed, come back to me and let's take a look at it together. And then you're going to submit it and I'm going to stand out of the way. And then we'll just kind of see where it goes from there.
Yeah, I think there's another aspect of that too, where people, especially the more junior you are, the more experience you get, I think you sort of see this pattern emerging, but you can maybe perceive something as failure that isn't. If I was doing a review of someone's open source contribution for like a potential hire, and I find a pull request and their initial swing at it was terrible, but they got pull request feedback, they responded to it, they showed understanding and internalization of it, and after a week they had something that was high quality and mergeable. To me, that's more useful information about the person. It reflects more positively on that person than if maybe their example was a perfect PR posted the first time, because then you don't necessarily see that process. But, I said at the beginning, and, we kind of do this of like trying not to turn away from the uncomfortable truth. And as someone who's kind of visible in open source, who does some work in security, who's seen a lot of things, I think we have a problem of imposter syndrome where we actually are having more imposters. And that is a tough thing to say, because I don't necessarily want the human at the other end of this thing to be like, that's me. This is probably not you, but we have lots of people who maybe have no domain knowledge or no specific knowledge or lack the ability to write code on their own, going to something like an AI or an LLM model and getting that code generated and maybe submitting it without understanding. So like, I face this. Like, I'm not going to pretend like this is for someone else. Like, I have a rule where if I use AI to generate something and I can't reach independent understanding of exactly what it does, where if you put me in that code and nothing else in a room, I can explain to someone what it does, that I probably shouldn't be pushing that somewhere. And so like, I kind of feel like imposter syndrome around that, around like, I don't want to use AI to the point where I'm out extending beyond what I can grasp and kind of becoming that imposter for a moment. Not like I'm going to go wear a hat that says imposter on it, but like we have those moments where we sort of go outside of our knowledge, and how in like the realm of AI do we avoid being that imposter? Being that nice, kind person on every PR is harder when you're getting swamped with them. So like what's the balance?
Yeah. So I think it comes down to communication. I think everyone loves communication and telling a story and hearing a story. And so a lot of times what I will do, for example, I have just now been learning Rust, and it's very confusing, and I haven't, like, coming from Python, I'm trying to figure out what half the stuff is. But as I was working on something, I realized there was a bug in one of the libraries that I was using. And so I was sitting there in my terminal, and I was like, wait, is this really a bug, or do I just really not understand? And then I opened an issue and said, hey, I'm brand new to Rust. I am trying to make this work. I got stuck here and got this output. I think I can go and fix it. But if you guys want to do this differently, just let me know. And so then I went back to the terminal and basically said, well, what would be involved in fixing this? Or like, what is the pattern that's broken? And then once I fully understood, like, I didn't know how to go write the Rust code, but once it explained it to me that it had something to do with the way you hand off variables in Rust. I can't remember the wording for it yet.
It's fine. I'm a Python developer too. I'm just sitting here and smiling and nodding along. So
yeah, it's something about like you can hand it off through a string of functions, but there's an original owner, and you can pass ownership or not pass ownership. It's more than pass by reference. It's kind of confusing. I'm still learning it. But that was the issue at play. I was trying to use the library in a way that wasn't meant to, but it was a really cool way to use it. And so I just went back through and tried to understand what I was doing as best I could. And the goal was for me not to look like an imposter, as I showed up on the other side, but for me to also be able to say, someone else probably wants to use this. Or if the project really doesn't want this and they don't want it to be used that way, then we probably need some comments in here, or there needs to be something mentioned. So that's another part of the two-way street, where if someone comes to you and they bring you a PR and it's just hot garbage, like you could tell they didn't read anything about the project, or maybe they did. It's an opportunity for the people that run that open source community to say, hey, wait a minute, do our contributing guidelines need work? Or do we document the developer guidelines of like how you're supposed to test and how you're supposed to develop and the goals of the project? Just so that way people don't spend all weekend working on a PR only to find out that it's outside the goals of the project. That's just super frustrating.
I think there's a couple of things you said there that I want to highlight, because you glossed over a really smart strategy you use there, which is that it doesn't sound like you told the AI, go fix this bug. You told the AI, I'm seeing this, help me understand what's happening. So like sort of using yourself as an intermediary. And this is actually, I think this is a massively underutilized way of people use AI, is if you use AI, you've discovered a bug, you shouldn't immediately go, I'm going to go fix this bug now. That is not your next step. Your next step is writing a high quality bug report, maybe with a reproducer. And that might go from being, I've invested hours in this, to write a reproducer that's, 10 lines long instead of my 100-line program. But you can have the AI do that minimization for you, check it up, and sort of things like that, keeping that human in the loop, right? So what are kind of you up to these days, though, right? Like we've talked a lot about the past and the history. Is there anything new and exciting you're working on now, or maybe open source, or maybe even if not, if you want to talk a little bit about some cool technology you've gotten to mess with recently?
Yeah, so I've been doing and work, like everything that I do is around what we call, used to be called RHEL Lightspeed, and now is the RHEL command line assistant. So what we want to do is be able to put a small command line tool inside of RHEL, so that way customers could actually go and ask questions about issues they're having in RHEL or offering Red Hat Enterprise Linux. We call it RHEL for short because we say the word all the time. But it's really trying to understand, how can we help a junior sysadmin, or someone that maybe doesn't have any sysadmin experience, at least get some knowledge of what's going on in the system and an idea of what to fix, and take a little bit of stress off the senior people, and allow the junior people to be able to ask those questions and get answers. And so what we do is we take, whatever questions that you ask, and we back it with Red Hat knowledge. Some of that knowledge is, directly accessible on the website that you could go and read. Some require you to be a customer, and some is stuff that's internal knowledge. So the great thing about it is that you as a customer could just DNF install this one command line client and then ask questions. So that's a lot of kind of the main thing that I've been doing. And then
does that do anything with discoverability? Because that's the thing, when I see someone who I'm trying to get them like up to speed on a Linux command line, I feel like there's 1,000 things to learn and there's no real place to start because they're all just a little bit better. Like you can be really strong and then you learn tmux existed. Holy crap. This makes so much sense. I can put it here or there. You know, the various little tools like being able to pipe things to xargs or using find with like, there are all these little tricks. And have you figured out any way to help out with discoverability of those sort of things for people starting out who maybe want to learn those command line tricks, even if they're not going to be a sysadmin, if they're just a software developer on a Linux or even a Mac trying to get more stuff done?
Right. And I use this with tools all the time. You know, whether it's just going to website like chatgpt.com or, you know, Claude or something like that and just asking a question. But a lot of times what I find myself doing is saying, hey, I need to be able to do X, Y, and Z on the command line. How do I do that? Or like, what are my options available to me on a modern Linux distribution? Because sometimes what you'll find is you know how to do it one way. And then you find out there's one command that does that for you. Like there's Linux command called apropos, you know, so you can go and find different commands that exist on the system. I didn't know that was there.
I'm sitting here going, wait, what?
Yeah, it's apropos, like the word. So like if you type like apropos and then a space and then find, let's say, it will go and dig through everything that it can find on your system that would help you find something. So it comes up with like FD, it comes up with find, it comes up on my machine. I'm seeing some things coming from Perl, CPAN, and some other stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, you can, if you don't know what a tool is, but you're trying to jog your memory on what it is, that's a pretty cool way to find it. And there's no internet access required. It's just only on your machine.
Nice. I suspect there's some configuration required on Gen 2 because mine is coming up with blank for everything, but that's okay. That's all right. I haven't put those Legos together yet. Yeah. So one thing that we like to do here, and I stole this from Tabitha, who's my other host on here. It was her idea. Gross moments on me. This is all her, but is there like, you know, a little open source project somewhere that you think maybe needs a little bit of love and attention that you could take the platform here to be like, hey, go check this out, go help them out a little bit, you know, maybe influential to you, maybe something new and shiny, just, you know, your chance to point a flashing neon sign at an open source project here?
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, there's a lot. Now I have to think about how I want to narrow this down because there's a lot that are pretty complex. Wow, that's a really good question.
I'm not going to limit you to just one. You can just tell us all the cool stuff you know about, and we'll sit here and talk about it for a little bit.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think a lot of the stuff that I've been working with lately, well, I've just been amazed with PyTorch. That once I discovered I think it was someone's like doctoral thesis, or it was some kind of academic related thing, and everyone just jumped on it and they're like, oh, cool, it's PyTorch. I thought that was very interesting. I think as far as like the modern stuff that requires a lot of attention, that's a tough one. But I will say I use a whole lot of everything that has to do with fast MCP, like fast API based things. That's something I'm dealing with all the time to build MCP servers. And then anything dealing with like text-based interfaces. I think that's always something that can use a little bit of love and care, just because it seems like something's always changing there. For example, I use tmux a lot as well. And then someone told me about Zellij, Zellij, which I can't remember what it's written in. It may be Rust, but it's meant to do what tmux does and take it to the next level. And then there's Ghost TTY as well, which is
somewhere GNU screens over in the corner crying about its lost life.
Oh yeah, and then there's
app, man.
Ghost TTY has got my attention as well because the author really wants to take terminals to the next level, but not like we're going to throw some tabs on the top and call it a day. But what he's really interested in doing is getting essentially like if tmux and a terminal had a baby and it was all integrated, and there's more and more things that your terminal knows how to do that it did before, and you end up using less external things like tmux. It's pretty cool, and the font rendering is pretty good. And
if you're a Linux user and you've not tried one of the alternative good terminals, like I don't use Ghost TTY, I use Foot, which is another
great,
one.
Yeah.
Foot is like more like simple and fast is what the idea is. But like literally, if you're taking something like Foot or or like I think I've used Ghost TTY and tested this. I'm not sure. I'm trying to remember the Alacrity. Is that it? The one that the original GPU one. If you like use one of those and then you compare it to something like Console with a K or GNOME Terminal, it's stunning how much faster they can be, and they are. So that's a good little pointer, and that's maybe a thing that I don't think folks would know. But the podcast is the Gross Out Podcast, and we've been in the tech industry a long time. We've seen a lot of gross things, but the path when we're trying to get something done, not always direct from A to Z. We got to go through bumps and valleys and lefts and rights and ups and downs. And so can you tell us maybe a story about a situation in your career, maybe related to open source, where you had a moment where you really felt like you were getting grossed out, and what you did to help you emerge from that victorious?
Oh, wow. Shoot. I grossed myself out by breaking quite a few Plesk servers at one point for hosting customers. But yeah, that's not terribly interesting. I think the one thing, I hate it when people have to search for knowledge that should be available to them. Like when I first got started at Rackspace, there's a lot of stuff that's just not well documented. Like just documentation for software projects was not as good as it is today. And so a lot of times it was trial and error, and trial and error meant taking down a service or taking down a machine or a very angry customer on the phone. One of the things that I did early on was try and put everything I learned, or every mistake that I made, or every little tidbit of knowledge that a senior person gave me. I started writing it down, originally in Tomboy notes. You remember Tomboy notes back on Ubuntu? It was kind of like a little notepad. It meant to be the
like sticky
on the
notes
Mac
from back in classic Mac. Yeah.
Kind of the same thing. And so then I created a WordPress site that was just internal, and put as much of that stuff on it as possible because it was really easily searchable. And that was something. I'm trying to think of something that was really bad though. Oh my gosh.
I mean, I think that's kind of the case though. I think for a lot of us, these are like the mundane little things. It's about getting over it. If someone's listening to this and they're like, how am I ever going to conquer all of this, learning curve that I'm trying to climb right now? And that's a really great strategy. Write the stuff down. Like, oh my gosh, I thought you kind of took a left and I said you take a right, because I remember it used to be when Rackspace had those IRC channels, there would be in the topics, you would often just have a link to someone's text file of like useful notes about things. And it would just be a place there. And here's a piece of advice that I found is super valuable. Those undocumented things of like knowledge that just kind of bounces around but never gets written down. Right now, regardless of someone's listening, regardless how you feel about using AI is your crowbar to fix this. If you ever have had knowledge that's passed around, that's not well documented, processes that are manual, this is the best time ever to document it, because you're going to be able to justify that much more easily to your leadership by pointing out and saying, like, if we don't write it down, then one day, these agents and stuff aren't going to have it there to read. For some reason, it seems like in some environments saying, let's help the AI on board might actually get a little bit further than let's help the human on board. And so there's a little bit of an opportunity for whether or not you want to be in the hype party or not, to sort of hitch the stuff up to it to get the things done that you need done, right. Like getting those bits and pieces documented.
It's one of the greatest parts about AI, because people don't want to write documentation, but they love having that agents.md file in there, with all their stuff in it, and be able to explain how the repo fits together. And I'm like, that's documentation. It's like step one to getting documentation. Now you need to take more steps, but that's a really good step one. And writing that stuff down and making it available for other people is a great way to advance in your career. And I think it's also something good. One thing I tell people all the time is like, don't compare your beginning to somebody else's middle. And one of the ways to move out of that beginning level is to take this stuff and write it down and be able to refer back to it. Because then not only will you be able to refer back to it, but then someone else will get stuck. And you're like, hey, I also got stuck with that. Let me teach you how I did it. And I'll send you the thing that you can store for later. And the best part about
Linus Torvalds, right? Like someone asked Linus Torvalds, what's your backup strategy? And he said, I put stuff on the internet, and if it's worth keeping, it stays there. Like that's the magic of what you're talking about writing stuff down, open source. The intersection is just go write it in the docs. go write it in the bug tracker, in the bug you're
yeah.
solving. Like, put those breadcrumbs there, because at least when you get to be my age, and I'm not that old yet, I don't think, you might not remember what you were thinking about that bug 2 years ago, and you can have it written down there. You can have it there public, use that for everyone. So I love that at all. Like, use the internet as your storage spot if you're able to work in the open and put it out there. Yeah. I think there are probably a few Etherpads on OpenStack's hosting that probably have like J notes on some random project from like 2019 or something, right?
Well, and while you're talking, I did think of something that would be a good example for the gross thing. I was working at Rackspace. We had just acquired SliceHost, a VPS provider out of St. Louis. And we were working on.
I witness for all this.
We were compiling our own kernels and managing configs and then updating them along the way. And that's when Zen was still out of the tree. So it was kind of a mess. And then all of a sudden we came in Monday morning, we compiled our kernels, we went to go and test them, and everything failed. And then we go and we start digging. And that was when they changed the Zen virtual block device driver. So like the hard drive equivalent that got mounted up into a virtual machine, they changed it from SDA, like the traditional, like the way a SATA drive would get mounted, to XVDA. And for most people, they don't care. But for a lot of our customers, they had SDA hard coded inside their instance, which then was going to cause it to break. Once it rebooted, it was done. And so if people had used UUIDs in their SEF stat, they'd be fine. But most people did not at that time because it just wasn't very popular. And so, man, we went back and we were trying to figure out ways to do it and change the kernel config, and we couldn't do it. And finally I said, I wonder if we can change the code. This is before AI, and I knew nothing about changing anything in the kernel. So I started digging and grepping for streams. And then I finally found it. And I didn't know how to use get blame yet either. I didn't understand all this stuff. Went in there and I was like, oh, I see exactly where it is. Why don't we make this configurable so people can turn this off? So you can go in your kconfig and then just turn that off and get the old legacy thing. So I went through and made the best patch I possibly could. I ran it by somebody else that had done kernel work before, and they're like, yeah, that makes sense. Send it in. And then, of course, as you know, when you send in a kernel patch to the kernel mailing list, it's got to be perfect. Like your email headers have got to be perfect. The way the patch is, the way you specify stuff. And so I'm thinking, I don't want Linus Torvalds to come yelling at me, some idiot trying to put in a patch. So I go and submit it. Nothing happens. Sits for like 3 or 4 days. And then finally got an email reply on the list by Alan Cox, and he was furious. Apparently the change was made absolutely on purpose. It should never be changed. And I got a list of reasons why my patch and why I was completely wrong and why I needed to go and fix all of our customers' VMs instead. And so that was one of those moments where I was just sitting there in my chair, just sweating. And
like, honestly, like, I really, really like this story. It highlights the inherent tension that there always exists between developers and operators. And, developers, we often only have really rough knobs to turn to force people to do behavior. But I'll tell you what, it wouldn't be gross to me if I'm going to get told off by someone. Like, let it be Alan Cox, sure. Let it be Greg KH. Like someone with like a brand name Linux person told you off on a mailing list. That's pretty cool, man. Is that like got like?
It didn't feel that way at the time. It didn't feel that way at the time, but it definitely feels much more funny now than it did then. But.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure y'all probably ended up shipping that patch anyway and saving your customers, or at least buying you a little bit of time to migrate that. I know Rackspace well enough to know they might still be running that patch today.
It was something that we carried for a while. I can't remember exactly how long, but it was. But then at the same time, of course, starting to try to get the customer education out there for them to go in and change it. But of course, there's some percentage that won't get the emails or won't go change it. So.
It was super nice to sit here and chat with you and catch up for a while, Major. I feel like we could probably cover another 40 minutes just going back and forth on all sorts of stuff. There are huge swaths of our crossover and past that we haven't even associated yet. But I really appreciate you coming out here and having time for it. Like to thank Ben, our producer, for taking care of this. But I'm Jay Faulkner. This is Major Hayden. Thank you so much for listening. And thank you so much to G Research as well for enabling us to come out here to have guests to get this podcast produced. If you're looking for work in the London, UK area, go to gresearch.com/vacancies, or in general, just go to gresearch.com. We've got events set up for all sorts of folks. So come check it out. And if they ask who sent you, tell them it was Jay at the podcast. Thanks, y'all. Have a good night.